welcome. I'm Jade of Jaded Reader, and today I'm going to be doing an April wrap-up. So you may have noticed that it is the month of May and it's towards the end of the month, but I'm actually not doing this late. Well, I'm technically doing it late. I'm giving myself a little bit more time to do my wrap-up because I was filming my wrap-up before I was done with the month so I could have it out at the first of the month. Long story short, I do my wrap-up at the end of the month for the previous month. That way I have time to let it sink in. I have time to finish all of my books because I'm a procrastinator and I read up all the way until the midnight of. I'm the worst. First off, April was the OWLS exam hosted by G at Book Roast. The OWLS exam is part of a two-part read-a-thon where you take your OWLS and then you take your newts. It's based off of Harry Potter. They're exams you take in order to get a career. I chose Hogwarts Professor because I love teaching. In order to be a Hogwarts Professor, I needed to complete 7 OWLS, which is 7 different prompts. I needed to do Defense Against the Dark Arts, which I did indeed do, and then 5 other subjects as well as the one I would like to teach. I did complete this. I am a little unsure of what I want to teach at Hogwarts. I'm between Transfiguration, Charms, and Care of Magical Creatures. All 3 of those to me sound incredibly compelling, so one of those 3 are the ones I'm going to choose. So I will go over which book goes for which prompt, but I completed Transfiguration, Potions, Muggle Studies, Divination, Defense Against the Dark Arts, Charms, Care of Magical Creatures, Arithmancy, Herbology, and Ancient Runes. I did indeed complete my OWLS. I didn't complete them how I planned to, but that's usually how it goes. I go in ascending order, so starting from the least amount of stars all the way up to my favorite read of the month. Sometimes my favorite read of the month does not have 5 stars, and that's because sometimes I have to admit to myself I have poor taste. So let's get into it. First off on my list, I read Once and Future, which is by Amy Rose Capetta and Corey McCarthy. I actually read this and I did a reading vlog on it. It's pretty extensive. It's like the only thing I was really reading that entire week, and I did buddy read this with Madison from Princess of Paperback, Soleil from Little Reader's Corner, and Jess from Tundra Tomes. We did have a lot of fun talking about this book. However, unfortunately, I am only giving this book 3 stars. This is the Illumicrate version of the book. I'm holding up this one because this is the one I'm keeping. I'm actually unhauling the other one because I really don't need 2 copies of this. So my first thing I have to say about this book is that it is a statement piece. This book had something to say in our political climate and it said it. Unfortunately, I feel like it didn't execute it well. There's a lot of really good messages in this book that just didn't hit home. It wasn't a good argument, it was a good intentioned argument. This book has excellent representation for the LGBTQ+ community. It has a lot of representation as far as different cultures and ethnicities. I just found that all of the characters and all of their lines having to do with this ended up ultimately falling pretty flat. It's also incredibly cheesy. I couldn't come up with another word. It's campy, it's cringy, crunchy. All of the Arthurian legend stuff really was like just hammered in, and it was such a bummer for me. I really love Arthurian legend. I was really loving the idea of a gender bend Arthurian legend. However, these are debut authors. They're a couple. They just got engaged, and I want to invest in them. I'm hoping that in a trial and error study, this is the error and they will be doing another trial. After that, coming in with 3.5 stars, I am really surprised. The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Okay, the reason I say I'm surprised at this is I actually was reading this during my Once and Future vlog. It was the book I went to when I couldn't stand Once and Future anymore. I was really enjoying it. Felt really magical. This was the Book Junkie Book Club of the Month pick, hosted by Rachael Marie at Rachael Marie Book Junkie. We had a live show up there where we kind of accidentally tore this book apart. So this follows Celia and Marco, who are 2 people that are participating in a trial. The trials are taking place in this arena, which is the Night Circus, and honestly, like, this book started and I was ready to get into it. I don't want to explain too much of the plot because it is supposed to be something you just fall into. However, by the time I was about 3/4 of the way through, I realized like this was the plot. The plot was already happening and there was not going to really be a climax, and when there was a climax, it wasn't strong enough, and neither were the characters. I did not go in thinking I was going to dislike this book. I actually went in thinking I would love it, was loving it, and then it just started to nag at me. This book is somehow both too long and too condensed. I tried to allow myself myself to just fall into the atmosphere, which is really, really beautiful. By the end of the book, I was disappointed and I felt like my trust was put in the wrong characters. I didn't feel it. They were not believable characters for me. They were interesting characters. I wish I would have gotten more of them, but I didn't. By the time I reached the end, I realized the middle wasn't good, and that's frustrating. Yeah, you can watch the live show to get my full thoughts on it. I really did think I was going to love this book until I reached the end. Oh, sorry, I already suck. Okay, so Once in Future fulfilled the prompt of divination, which is to read a book set in the future. Once in Future, it is set in our future. There's a lot of pop culture references and some really weird moments where Merlin is singing. Divination, and then this fulfilled the prompt for Charms, which was to read an adult book. Then to fulfill my Defense Against the Dark Arts, I have the Rosie Project by Graham Simpson. Rachel recommended it to me because I was looking for an R book for Defense Against the Dark Arts, and this fulfills it. I listened to it on SCRIBD. The Rosie Project was not my usual read whatsoever, so let me get into why it's not my regular read. First off, it's contemporary. It's a romance. None of those things usually appeal to me. I prefer violence and magic to anything else. A contemporary romance was not on my list, and again, I really like magic and violence. The Rosie Project follows Dawn, who is a socially challenged genealogist who works at a university. It takes place in Australia. Dawn creates a questionnaire looking for the perfect wife. Obviously, there is no perfect wife, there's no perfect person, and it's immediately challenged by the lovely Rosie, who completely fails the entire questionnaire and promptly tells him that he's objectifying women. So Dawn decides, while Rosie cannot be his perfect mate, they can definitely be friends, and as Dawn is a genealogist and Rosie is looking for her biological father, the two end up hanging out together, and it's just a really cute book, and it challenges a lot of different subjects, and the discussions were really well done, and the mystery of Rosie's father being a really compelling part of the storyline. I ended up giving the Rosie Project 4 out of 5 stars. The reason why I'm not giving it a 5 out of 5 stars is, first off, I did think it was going to be funnier, and I could tell some lines were supposed to hit, and they didn't hit for me, and ultimately I just kind of felt like something was missing from the book. It also is just not my type of read, so maybe I'm just a mean, cold, old Aquarius who just can't see the love in things, so that's a possibility too. Next up on my list is The Language of Thorns by Leigh Bardugo, illustrated by Sarah Kippen. It's beautiful. The outer cover, it's gorgeous. Then you have the artwork. I'm gonna try not to spoil anything. The reason I bring Sarah Kippen up is because she does such an amazing job of slowly illustrating each page. The margins slowly fill with art until you have the final page where you have the finished artwork. It was just so fun to read. On top of the artwork, all of the stories were just, they felt like actual classic fairy tales, old creepy fairy tales. Leigh Bardugo does such an amazing job of immersing you into her world, which is the Grishaverse. This is an excellent addition to the Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom duology, the Grisha trilogy, and King of Scars. So there's animal violence, implied pedophilia, violence in general. Those would be the triggers I would look out for. My favorite story in this actually had animal violence in it, and that is the Too Clever Fox. Once I reached the end of this book, I was like, the entire time I was just holding my breath. I knew I was holding it, and then I released it, and I was like, wow, that was a really good story. I ended up giving The Language of Thorns 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was almost a 5-star read. One of the stories was boring. I won't tell you which one because I think it's really important for you to just read this book and enjoy it because you might not find it boring at all. And this fulfilled the prompt for herbology, which is to read a book with plants on the cover, and there's thorns and little twigs and leaves. I also finished Saga. This is volume 7, 8, and 9. This finishes up the series up until this date. I know that Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples are taking like a hiatus break, so volume 9 currently is the last in the series, and I cannot let it end there. I really hope that the hiatus is not long. So volume 7 of Saga, I ended up giving 4 out of 5 stars. There were a lot of intense moments, but there was also just a lot of moments that kind of dragged. This is a sequel, obviously, because it is volume 7, so it fulfills my potions prompt, which is to read a sequel. Then we have volume 8. Volume 8 fulfills the prompt of Care of Magical Creatures, which is to read a book with a land animal on the cover. Zebras, they're on land. That's true. And I also give this one 4 out of 5 stars for a lot of the same reason. Then volume 9, I did give 5 out of 5 stars. This was heart-wrenching. I can't even talk about it. I will talk about Saga though. If you have not previously been on my channel, not heard about Saga, Saga is a graphic novel by Image Comics. It is an adult comic. There's nudity nudity, there's violence, there's sex. It is a sci-fi that is following a family of 3. You have Marco, Alana, and Hazel. They're a family where their 2 species are at war with each other. It's a huge deal. It's like the entire galaxy is at war. People are dying, and it's because these 2 races do not get along. However, Alana and Marco beat the odds. It's very Romeo and Juliet-esque, but instead of killing themselves, they have a baby. And the baby is incredibly controversial. It is a secret that Hazel even exists. A lot of people see her as either change in the war or an abomination. There's a lot of discussions that go on with Hazel and her body. This was so well done. This entire series as a whole, I would give a 5 stars. The characters have so much depth. Even the side characters you fall in love with, and you're screaming. It's really good, but a lot of different triggers apply for this as far as violence, sexual assault, pedophilia, rape, miscarriages. The entire series has quite a bit of things that happen. Keep that in mind. It's vibrant, it's detailed, it's beautiful. I cannot say enough about this series. So then I also have Miles Morales Spider-Man by Jason Reynolds. This book was really good. It took me way too long to read this book. I was reading it slowly for like maybe over a month, but it was really, really good. This follows Miles Morales, who is a Black Puerto Rican Spider-Man. I've loved Miles Morales for a very long time. This is not my first brush with Miles Morales, but Jason Reynolds does such a good job of incorporating Miles Morales' personality into Spider-Man and really does explore the differences and influences a person of color would have as Spider-Man. Miles Morales goes to a predominantly white private school and that he is less affluent than his classmates. Miles also deals with racism, and on top of that, just the stresses of being Spider-Man and being in high school. Miles is finding out a lot more about his identity, whether he wants to continue being Spider-Man and have that added pressure, and just where he fits in his city. So this was a really, really good book. If your only introduction to Miles is through Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which I highly recommend you watch, that is one of the prettiest, most well-done films of my life. I've watched it like 7 or 8 times. Then first off, go watch this. Maybe pick up some Miles comics, but if you just want to just see what Miles is about, this is a great introduction. Watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, get a little bit of an origin story going, and then this plops right in after that plot, and yeah, you get to explore how Miles is as Spider-Man. Great villains, great character development, and an excellent character-driven plot. I ended up giving Miles Morales a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and that's simply just because it did read as a middle grade, and unless I'm incredibly mistaken, he is in high school. Oh, also, if Throne of Glass counts as a retelling, then Miles Morales counts as a retelling because it's a retelling of like different characters and themes that happen in comic books. So I'm counting this for my Ancient Runes, which is to read a retelling, and you can fight me in the comments or you can just be like super nice. Then for Muggle Studies, which is to read a contemporary, I have Gengoro Tagame's My Brother's Husband, Volume 1. This is an excellent manga. Wow, okay. I think this is actually one of my favorite mangas of all time. This really just, it breaks a mold here. Let me just start off with that. This manga honestly breaks into a genre that is often fetishized, which is male romances in Japan. Oftentimes, they are put into pop culture and media and shunned in the real world. That is something that Tagame definitely explores here, as you have Mike, a Canadian gay man, who after his husband's death goes to reconcile with Yaichi, which is his husband's brother. The main character, I would say, is Yaichi, and then you have Kana here, who pretty much represents all of the good in the world and the questions and exploration that is like normal and positive when looking at people's sexualities. This was really well constructed. It was really reflective, and I think that it definitely is branching out and making a statement that Japan really does have problems with accepting homosexuality, and it is not normalized. Despite it being in various forms of media, it is not often accepted the same way that it is in other countries. I really enjoyed reading this. I cannot wait to continue it, and I understand why everyone's been giving it 5 out of 5 stars, because I am going to too. I marked it up pretty hard. The art style is really iconic. You have these great flowing panels. If you like a really easy to read manga that's very clear cut and you can tell who's talking when, this is a very good manga for that. So if this is your first introduction to manga, I highly suggest My Brother's Husband. It was one of my favorite reads of the month for sure. Then for Transfiguration, I read Crown of Feathers by Nikki Paparetto. Oh, I really loved this book. This is the Al Crate edition, so the regular edition does have a white background. I I have seen a couple negative reviews on this, and I honestly, I cannot conceptualize why, except for that the first 10% of this book, I would say, you're definitely getting a feel for the world, and if you don't like world building at the beginning of a book, you're gonna have a hard time getting into it, but it's only for the first 10%, and it is worth it. I think it was probably my favorite read of the month, and it ended up on my favorites bookshelf because I really can't wait for the next one. So we have the main character, Veronica, who is with her sister, and they are refugees after a giant war that has been going on between two kingdoms. They're from what used to be a queendom and is now being dismantled, and they have fled to a neighboring kingdom because they have a special type of magic that is being outlawed. The Phoenix Riders, along with their Phoenix, used to be the warriors and protectors of this realm, and they have also been dismantled along with the queendom. I really liked the connections and the bonds with the Phoenix Riders and the Phoenixes. It made a lot of sense to me. It was really easy to understand. It felt intuitive. I didn't want to leave this world. And I was finishing this book at a really rapid pace. You have Veronica, who has always dreamed of being a Phoenix Rider, and her sister Val, who's just trying to make sure that they both survive. I cannot believe that this is a debut book. I went to go find other works that Nikki Paparetto has done, only to find out that this is the only one. This is her debut, and I could not believe this was a debut book. It didn't register as debut for me at all. It registered as an excellent beginning to what is probably going to be an awesome series. There's a couple things I really liked about this book. There is a girl dressed as a boy trope. There is a really well done spin. That actually is one of my favorite tropes. I like when there's female knights and stuff like that, and this did have that kind of feel to the trope, but it was unique in how the trope was presented. There's definitely discussions of gender identity. You also have sight impaired representation. It was, in my opinion, really compelling. It was interesting, and I liked what Nikki Paparetto did with that discussion. I'm really looking forward to the conversations that happen further in the series. I love dragons, and I thought that I would feel like I was missing something having Phoenix instead as like the main magical creature. I know I'm kind of obsessed with phoenixes, so that's what came out of this, is like further obsession with more magical creatures, and I can now add Phoenix to my list. I also would like to be a Phoenix Rider. I gave Crown of Feathers 5 out of 5 stars, and it did fulfill the prompt for transfiguration because it has sprayed edges, which are beautiful and purple. This book was the book for me. All in all, I read 10 books this month. I really enjoyed them. This was like an excellent batch of books. Let me know in the comments below if you passed your owls, if you took the owls, if you even know what I'm talking about. Do you think I'm talking about a bird? How did you do? If you have a owls wrap up, go ahead and leave the link. I would love to watch it if I haven't already. I hope you're enjoying the sun or more stars wherever you are, and until next time, bye! 5, I ended up giving 5 out of 5 stars. This is not 5. Tricky things. Booktube is a tricky place. Yeah. Oof. Yeah. Nope, I can't. It's not a shoujo. It is a shoujo. I have officially raved about this book enough, and I will hate myself in editing. Defense Against the Dark Arts, and it fulfilled the prompt for Defense Against the Dark Arts. It fulfilled the prompt. A whole bunch of these. There's a cat. Oh, sorry, I got distracted by a cat. It's so cute. Are you looking at me? I'm looking at you. I think I'm flirting with cat.